Did you know there's an invisible behavior, something you do every day without realizing it, that's literally draining your money and preventing you from building the financial life you so desire? What if I told you the problem isn't necessarily in how much you earn, but rather in something much more subtle, something that happens in the small choices of your daily life, decisions that seem completely harmless, but together form a financial black hole that sucks away your prosperity? In the next few minutes, you're going to discover exactly what this destructive pattern is that affects millions of people. You'll understand the deep psychological reasons behind it, and most importantly, you'll learn the concrete method to eliminate this leak from your life once and for all. But I need to warn you, what you're going to discover here might be uncomfortable. It might make you look at your own habits with different eyes. It might reveal truths about your relationship with money that you'd prefer not to see. However, if you have the courage to stay until the end, you'll have in your hands the knowledge that separates those who accumulate wealth from those who live eternally tight, no matter how much they earn. So tell me, are you prepared to confront the small financial saboteurs that are stealing your future? Are you willing to make real changes, or do you prefer to keep pretending everything's fine while your money slips through your fingers? Because believe me, after this video, you won't be able to ignore these patterns anymore. They'll become evident, and then the choice will be yours. Change or stay in the same place. Let's start with a brutally honest truth that most people don't want to admit, and that truth is that you're probably sabotaging your own financial life every day through small decisions that seem insignificant, but when added up over time, create monumental damage. Think with me, how many times this week did you spend money on things that weren't really necessary? How many times did you make an impulse purchase, grabbed a coffee at the expensive coffee shop when you could make it at home, ordered food through an app when you had food in the fridge, bought something on sale that you didn't need just because it was cheap, subscribed to a service you barely use, kept forgotten subscriptions that charge your card every month? If you stop to think honestly, you'll realize this happens much more frequently than you imagine, and each of these decisions, in isolation, seems harmless, seems irrelevant. It's $5 here, $10 there, $20 over there, small amounts that you don't even miss at the moment. But here's the big problem, the big deception that keeps people financially trapped. These small leaks aren't small when you add everything up over a month, a year, a decade. Have you stopped to calculate how much you spend per month on absolutely unnecessary things? Have you added up all these small expenses that go unnoticed? Because I guarantee you, if you do this exercise with honesty, you'll be shocked by the result. You'll discover you're throwing away hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars every month on things that add no value to your life. And worse, you don't even notice, because each individual decision seems so small, so harmless, that you don't even register it. Your brain doesn't even classify it as a significant expense. But that's exactly where the danger lies. Let me tell you a real story that perfectly illustrates this point. There's a person I know, let's call him John. John earned a reasonable salary. He wasn't rich, but it wasn't little either. It was enough to live well if managed properly. But John lived complaining that money wasn't enough, that he was always tight, that there was never anything left at the end of the month, and he genuinely didn't understand why. Because in his head, he didn't spend on anything extravagant, he didn't have expensive vices, he didn't buy extravagant things. So where was the money going? Then one day, he decided to do an experiment. For an entire month, he wrote down absolutely every expense, every penny that left the account, every coffee, every snack, every little thing, and at the end of the month when he added everything up, he almost couldn't believe it. Just on coffees, snacks, and delivery, things he considered small and normal expenses, he had spent more than $1,000, $1,000 that could have been invested, building wealth, generating returns, but which were literally consumed without leaving absolutely anything of value. And that's without counting the other leaks, the subscriptions he didn't even use, the impulse purchases at the market, the unnecessary gifts, the irresistible promotions. When he added everything up, he realized he was wasting almost half his salary on completely dispensable things, and most frightening, he had no awareness of this because they were always small things, nothing that seemed like a big expense, but the cumulative effect was devastating. Do you identify with this story? Do you also live with that feeling that money simply disappears and you don't know where it went? Because if so, you need to understand that this isn't a problem of how much you earn. It's a problem of how you spend. It's a problem of awareness, of attention, of control over the small daily decisions. Now let's talk about the psychology behind this behavior, because understanding the why is fundamental to being able to change. There's a very well-studied psychological phenomenon called small purchase bias, which basically means that our brain doesn't treat small expenses with the same seriousness it treats large expenses. When you're going to buy a car, a house, an expensive appliance, you research, compare prices, think a lot, consider whether you really need it, whether it fits in the budget, but when it's a small expense, your brain simply doesn't activate these defense mechanisms. It lets it pass. After all, it's just $10. What difference does it make? The problem is that this logic is completely flawed. Because if you spend $10 a day on unnecessary things, in a month that's $300. In a year that's $3,600. In 10 years that's $36,000 that you threw away. And if instead of throwing it away, you had invested it with compound interest, this could have turned into much more. Can you see how small decisions have enormous consequences when repeated over time? Can you understand how your brain tricks you into believing these expenses are irrelevant? There's another very important psychological factor, which is immediate gratification versus future reward. Our brain is naturally programmed to prefer pleasure now rather than benefit later. This is an evolutionary inheritance. In ancestral times, it didn't make sense to save food for the future when you might not be alive tomorrow. It made sense to consume now, enjoy now, but we no longer live in that context. Today we live in a society where planning for the future is essential, where delaying gratification is the key to prosperity, but our brain still operates with that old programming. So when you walk past the coffee shop and smell the coffee, your brain says, "Buy it, it'll give you pleasure now." And the rational part that should say, "Wait, you don't need this, you can make coffee at home and save this money," simply loses the battle, because immediate gratification is stronger, more seductive, more irresistible. How do you deal with this? How do you manage to win this internal battle between immediate pleasure and future benefit? Because if you don't develop this capacity, you'll continue making decisions that sabotage your future in the name of present comfort. Let's talk now about another great villain of financial leaks, which is marketing and consumption manipulation. Because you need to understand that there's an entire industry, billionaire, extremely sophisticated, working 24 hours a day to make you spend money, to make you buy things you don't need, to make you feel you need to consume to be happy, to be accepted, to have value. From the moment you wake up until the time you go to sleep, you're bombarded with consumption messages, ads, commercials, influencers showing products, promotional emails, discount notifications, everything strategically designed to activate your emotional triggers and make you buy. And it works. It works very well. That's why companies invest billions in it. Because they know exactly how to manipulate your brain, how to create artificial needs, how to make you feel you're losing something if you don't buy now, how to make you believe that purchase will solve a problem or fill a void. Are you aware of this? Do you realize how many of your purchasing decisions are really yours and how many were planted in your mind by marketing strategies? Because as long as you don't become aware of this manipulation, you'll continue being a puppet. You'll continue spending your hard-earned money to enrich companies while you yourself remain poor. There's something very important that needs to be said about the difference between real need and created desire. Because the truth is that most things we buy aren't needs. They're desires, they're wants, they're whims, and there's nothing wrong with having desires. The problem is when you confuse desire with need, when you treat everything as if it were essential, when you can't differentiate what really matters from what's superfluous. Real need is food, housing, health, transportation to work, basic clothing. The rest, absolutely all the rest, is desire, is optional, is choice. It may be a valid choice, it may be something that adds value to your life, but it's a choice, not a need. And when you start treating desires as needs, when you start feeling you need all these things that marketing says you need, you lose control, you become a slave to consumption, You work to sustain a lifestyle that actually doesn't bring you real happiness, only brings momentary satisfaction followed by more emptiness and more need to consume. Can you clearly differentiate your real needs from your created desires? Do you know what's really essential in your life and what's just noise, distraction, empty consumption? Now I want you to do a mental exercise with me. I want you to imagine what your financial life would be like if you completely cut all unnecessary expenses, if you stopped leaking money on small things, if you became absolutely conscious and intentional with every penny that leaves your account. How much would you save per month? How much could you be investing? How much wealth could you build over a few years? Probably much more than you imagine, probably enough to completely change your financial reality. But this requires something most people aren't willing to do. It requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires renouncing small, immediate pleasures for the sake of a much better future. Are you willing to make this sacrifice? Are you willing to live more simply, more intentionally, more consciously, to build real wealth? Or do you prefer to continue in the illusion that those small expenses don't make a difference? Continue sabotaging yourself. Continue being poor. Let me give you some practical and concrete examples of common financial leaks that are probably happening in your life right now. First, coffees and snacks outside the home. If you buy a $10 coffee every day, that's $300 a month you could save by making coffee at home. Second, delivery in restaurants. If you order food 3 times a week, spending an average of $50 per order, that's $600 a month that could be saved cooking at home. Third, forgotten subscriptions. That streaming you don't watch, that gym you don't attend, that app you don't even use. Adding everything up can easily give $200 a month going down the drain. Fourth, impulse purchases at the market. You go to buy 3 things and leave with 10 because you saw promotions, saw things that tempted you. This easily adds $200-300 extra a month. Fifth, unnecessary clothes and accessories. That piece you bought because it was on sale, but you'll wear once or never. This accumulates fast. If you add up just these 5 common leaks, you're talking about more than $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, $120,000 in 10 years. Money that could be building your financial freedom, but is being wasted on things that add no real value to your life. How many of these leaks do you identify in your own life? How many are you maintaining out of pure lack of awareness or discipline? Let's talk now about a very powerful concept that can completely transform your relationship with money, which is the concept of opportunity cost. Every time you spend money on something, you're not just losing that amount. You're losing everything that money could have become if you had invested it. You're losing the growth, the compound interest, the future wealth. For example, if you spend $300 a month on coffees outside the home, in a year that's $3,600. If you invested these $3,600 a year for 20 years with an average return of 8% per year, you would have accumulated more than $160,000 that you exchanged for little coffees you don't even remember drinking. That's the true cost of that $10 coffee. It's not just the $10. It's everything those $10 could have become. It's the future you're trading for 3 minutes of pleasure. When you start thinking in terms of opportunity cost, when you start seeing each expense not just by the nominal value, but by what you're giving up in the future, your decisions change completely. That impulse to buy something unnecessary loses strength because you clearly see the trade you're making, and often the trade isn't worth it. Do you think about opportunity cost when you're about to spend? Do you calculate what you're losing in the future every time you give in to a present impulse? There's a hard truth that needs to be said. If you want to build wealth, you need to learn to live below your means, not at the limit, not above, below. You need to earn more than you spend and invest the difference. Seems obvious, seems simple, but most people do exactly the opposite. They spend everything they earn. Many spend even more than they earn getting into debt. And then they're trapped in this cycle of working to pay bills, never building anything, never accumulating wealth, never having options. The only way out of this cycle is creating a margin, is spending less than you earn. And to spend less, you need to cut the leaks. You need to eliminate unnecessary expenses. You need to live more simply and intentionally. It's not about depriving yourself of everything. It's not about living miserably. It's about being conscious. It's about choosing where to put your money. It's about differentiating what really matters from what's just distraction. It's about building the future you want instead of wasting everything in the present. Do you live below your means, or are you always at the limit? Always tight, always without margin? Because if you're always tight, the problem isn't how much you earn, it's how much you spend unnecessarily. Let's address now a very important issue, which is social pressure and consumption to impress others. Because one of the reasons people spend so much on unnecessary things is to keep up appearances, to show status, to impress, to not seem less than others, and this is extremely financially destructive. Do you buy expensive clothes because you really need them, or because you want people to see you have the means? Do you change your phone every year because yours stopped working, or because you want to always have the latest model? Do you go to expensive restaurants because the food is really better, or because you want to post on Instagram and show a lifestyle? If you're spending money to impress other people, you're literally throwing your future in the trash to feed your ego. And worse, the people you're trying to impress probably don't even care. They're probably so worried about themselves they don't even notice, or if they notice, they'll forget in 5 minutes, while you'll be stuck with the financial consequences of that decision for a long time. Real wealth, true wealth, is usually invisible, is silent. Truly rich people don't need to keep showing off, keep displaying. They build wealth, accumulate assets, live well, but without unnecessary ostentation. While people who live showing off are usually broke inside, are in debt, are desperate to maintain a facade that isn't real. Are you spending to live or to appear? Are you building real wealth or just an illusion of success? Now I want to give you some practical and concrete strategies to eliminate these financial leaks from your life. Because it's not enough to just understand the problem, you need tools to solve it. First strategy: track all your expenses for at least 1 month. And when I say all, I mean all. Every coffee, every snack, every little thing. Write everything down. Use an app, a spreadsheet, a notebook, whatever, but record everything. Because you can only control what you measure, you need to have total clarity on where your money is going, and you'll be surprised by what you'll discover. Second strategy: after tracking, categorize your expenses, separate into essential and non-essential, into needs and wants. Be brutally honest in this classification, and then look at the non-essential category and ask, which of these expenses really add value to my life? Which ones can I cut without losing anything important? Cut ruthlessly. Be radical, because every dollar saved is a dollar that can be invested in your future. Third strategy: cancel all subscriptions you don't use regularly, whether streaming, gym, apps, magazines, whatever. If you don't use it at least once a week, cancel it. You can always resubscribe later if you really miss it, but you probably won't. Fourth strategy: implement the 24-hour rule for unplanned purchases. Whenever you feel the urge to buy something that wasn't in your plan, wait 24 hours, write down what you want to buy, and come back the next day. Most times, the urge will have passed and you'll realize you didn't need it, that it was just a momentary impulse. This simple rule can save thousands of dollars a year. Fifth strategy: prepare your meals at home. Take lunch to work. Make your coffee at home. Drastically cut delivery in restaurants. Eating out is one of the biggest financial leaks that exist and is extremely easy to solve. It just takes a little planning and discipline. Are you willing to implement these strategies? Are you willing to do the necessary work to control your spending? There's something I need to make very clear. Cutting unnecessary expenses isn't about living a miserable life. It's not about depriving yourself of everything. It's not about never having fun or never spending on anything that gives you pleasure. It's about being intentional. It's about consciously choosing where to put your money. It's about spending on what really matters and eliminating what's just noise. If you love coffee and that moment at the coffee shop really adds value to your life, fine. Keep going. But do it consciously, knowing exactly how much you're spending and accepting the opportunity cost. The problem isn't spending on what you love. The problem is spending without thinking, is leaking money on 1,000 little things that mean nothing, that add no value, that you don't even remember later. So the question is, what do you really want to spend your money on? What really matters to you? What really brings value, joy, meaning to your life? Identify those things and spend on them without guilt. But cut all the rest, cut all the waste, all the automatic consumption, all the impulse buying, all the spending to impress others, because this is stealing your future. Let's talk about the importance of having clear financial goals, because one of the reasons people spend so much without control is because they don't have a bigger goal. They don't have something they're working toward, so it's easy to spend on anything. After all, if you're not building anything specific, it doesn't matter where the money goes. But when you have clear goals, when you know exactly what you want to build, how much you need to save, in how much time, suddenly each spending decision becomes much easier because you can ask, does this bring me closer or take me further from my goal? If it takes you further, you don't do it. If it brings you closer or at least doesn't hinder, you consider it. What are your financial goals? Do you know how much you want to have accumulated in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Do you know how much you need to invest per month to get there? Do you have a plan, or are you just living on autopilot, spending everything you earn without any direction? Because without a goal, without a plan, you'll continue in the same place, or worse, you'll continue regressing while thinking everything's fine. Another fundamental issue is understanding that small changes generate big results when maintained consistently over time. You don't need to make a revolution overnight. You don't need to cut everything at once and live in total deprivation. You can start small. You can choose 1 or 2 leaks to eliminate this month, and then 1 or 2 more next month, and progress gradually. What's important is to start, is to get out of inertia, is to stop ignoring the problem and start acting. If you save just $10 a day, that's $300 a month, $3,600 a year. In 10 years, that's $36,000. But if you invest these $10 a day with compound interest, it can become much more. It can become $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 or more depending on returns. Do you see how a small change, something as simple as saving $10 a day, can completely transform your financial life over time? The problem is that people want immediate results, want to see a difference tomorrow, and when they don't see it, they give up. But wealth is built with patience, with consistency, with small, correct actions repeated thousands of times. Do you have that patience? Can you maintain discipline even without seeing immediate results? Because if you can't, you need to develop this capacity. Otherwise, you'll continue trapped in the cycle of immediate gratification that keeps you poor. There's a very important concept called financial automation that can help you a lot to control expenses and build wealth. The idea is that you automate your finances so that the correct behavior happens without depending on your willpower or discipline at every moment. How so? For example, you can set up an automatic transfer every first day of the month as soon as you receive your salary to an investment account. It could be 10%, 20%, as much as you can manage. But the transfer happens automatically. You don't even have to think. The money already leaves your checking account and goes straight to investments, and then you live with what's left. You force yourself to adapt to what's left, and it works. It works much better than depending on money being left over at the end of the month to invest, because there's never anything left over. There's always some expense, some emergency, some excuse. But if you take the money first, if you pay yourself first, as they say, then you guarantee you're investing every month without fail. You can do the same with fixed bills, automatic debit for everything that's essential, and leave in the checking account only money for variable expenses. And then when it runs out, it's gone. You manage with what you have until next month. This creates healthy pressure that forces you to control spending. Do you automate your finances or leave everything to willpower and discipline at each moment? Because willpower is a limited resource. If you depend only on it, at some point you'll fail. But if you create systems, create automations, the correct behavior happens regardless of how you're feeling. Let's talk now about a very common trap, which is the I deserve it thinking. You know, that voice that says, you worked hard this week. You deserve this present. You deserve to buy that. You deserve to spend a little on yourself. And look, there's some truth to this. You really do deserve to live well, deserve to treat yourself well, deserve to have pleasure. The problem is when this "I deserve it" becomes justification for any and all spending, when it becomes an excuse to buy compulsively, to spend without control, to sabotage your financial goals. Because then it's no longer about treating yourself well, it's about self-sabotaging and calling it self-care. True self-care is taking care of your future, is making decisions that your future self will thank you for, is having discipline today to have freedom tomorrow. Spending all your money on immediate gratifications isn't self-love, it's self-harm. It's trading your future for crumbs of momentary pleasure. So yes, you deserve good things, but you also deserve a solid financial future. You deserve not to live anxious about bills. You deserve to have options, to have freedom, to have security, and to have that, you need to make choices that may not be the most pleasurable in the moment, but are the most intelligent and loving for your future. How many times do you use "I deserve it" as an excuse to spend unnecessarily? How many times do you sabotage your future in the name of an immediate pleasure you won't even remember a week from now? Another extremely important issue is the influence of the environment and people around you on your consumption habits. If you associate with people who spend compulsively, who live buying, who show off, who value consumption, you'll naturally be influenced by this. You'll start thinking it's normal, that everyone does it, that you also need to do it to fit in, and then your spending increases, your consumption patterns change, and you don't even realize you're being influenced. But the opposite is also true. If you associate with financially conscious people, people who invest, who control spending, who live below their means, who build wealth, you'll be positively influenced. You'll absorb these habits. You'll normalize healthy behaviors. You'll feel motivated to do the same. So look around. Who are the people you spend the most time with? Do they have financial habits you want to imitate or that you should avoid? Do they influence you toward unconscious consumption or toward conscious wealth building? And if you realize you're surrounded by negative influences, maybe it's time to expand your circle, to seek people who are on the path you want to be on, because you inevitably become similar to those you associate with. So choose wisely. Let's talk about something that bothers a lot of people but needs to be said. The truth is that most people are more worried about appearing rich than being rich. They spend all the money they earn, or even more, to maintain an appearance of success, to have the nice car, the brand name clothes, the latest phone, the trips to post on Instagram. But inside, they're broke, they're in debt, they're desperate, they live on the edge, they live anxious, and this isn't wealth, this is prison, this is slavery to consumption, to appearance, to others' approval. True wealth is having assets that generate income, is having freedom to choose, is having financial peace. And this usually comes with living more simply than you could, with not showing off, with not spending everything you earn, with accumulating silently, with building behind the scenes. Do you want to appear rich or be rich? Because you can't have both, at least not in the beginning. You have to choose. Either you spend everything to keep up appearances, or you save and invest to build real wealth. Which do you choose? Because this choice will define your financial future. Now I want to talk about responsibility. Because at the end of the day, nobody else is responsible for your financial life except you. It's not the government's fault, the economy's, your low salaries, high prices. There's no use looking for external culprits. The truth is that your choices, your habits, your daily decisions are what determine your financial reality. And as long as you don't take total responsibility for this, as long as you keep blaming external factors, you won't change anything because you put yourself in a victim position, and victims have no power. Victims have no control. Victims only suffer and complain. But when you take responsibility, when you say, "My financial situation is the result of my choices, and if I change my choices, I change my situation," then you recover the power, then you become the protagonist, then you can transform your reality. So stop looking for excuses, stop victimizing yourself, stop blaming others, and own it. You are where you are because of the choices you made, and you'll be where you want to be when you start making different choices. It's that simple. Does it hurt to hear? Maybe. But it's the truth, and the truth liberates when you have the courage to accept it and act on it. Are you taking total responsibility for your financial life, or are you outsourcing the blame? Coming to the end, I want you to do a deep and honest reflection. Imagine your life 10 years from now if you continue doing exactly what you're doing now, continuing with the same consumption habits, the same financial leaks, the same impulsive decisions. Where will you be? Probably in the same place or worse, older, more tired, more frustrated, still complaining that money isn't enough, still not understanding why, still blaming everyone but yourself. This is the first version of the future. Now imagine the second version. You take seriously everything you learned here. You track your expenses, identify the leaks, cut the waste, take control of your finances, live intentionally and consciously, invest consistently every month over 10 years. Where will you be in this version? Probably in a radically different situation, with built wealth, with growing passive income, with freedom and options, with pride in yourself, with financial peace. Which of these two versions do you want to live? Because both are possible, both are real, and which one will materialize depends solely on the choices you make from now on. So choose, own it, act, because your financial life is in your hands, and only in your hands. Nobody's going to come save you. Nobody's going to do it for you. Either you take control or you continue adrift, simple as that.